When it comes to what your family eats and drinks, you know your choices matter. You're the expert because you know what fits your life. And getting it right starts with good information. That's why America's beverage companies are sharing more information about our ingredients at goodtoknowfacts.org. No spin, no judgments, just the facts straight from the experts for more than 140 beverage ingredients. Visit goodtoknowfacts.org.
South Carolina's got everything. Natural beauty, trendy cities, but you might miss your next big adventure in a smaller town. We've got you covered on the Palmetto Porch. Discover South Carolina's official podcast. I'm Devin Whitmire. Come with me as I venture off the beaten path and learn about these towns from the locals who know them best. Check out the Palmetto Porch wherever you get your podcasts. And for more information, head on over to scpalmettoporch.com.
If Chelsea were behaving like that, the media would paint it and say, well, they're just being street smart, they're just being savvy. When Forest try those tactics, you know, we're football terrorists.
Welcome to 1865, the Nottingham Forest podcast and our Football Terrorists show. We're recording on the morning of Sunday, the 12th of October. There's a heavy fog in the air and there's been a lot happening since our last monthly review, not least a new head coach and a long run without a victory. Coming up in today's show, penny for your thoughts. Our panellists put themselves in the shoes of some key figures at Forest. We'll hear from a Spurs fan with their thoughts on Ange Postecoglou, and we'll hear from you, the fans, on the same topic. Jeremy Davies will be joining us for yet another 1865 Football Terrorists sketch. And we'll have a chat about something more cheery, the progress of the Forest women's team. And last but not least, we'll have a quick fire round covering some of the big talking points of the season so far. I'm your host, Rich Ferraro, and for the third time in the 2025-26 season, welcome to Football Terrorists.
Football Terrorists.
Now, I'm here with a nice big strong cup of tea and an Art of Football hoodie, so thank you to them for sending that over. And let's welcome today's panel and ask them to tell us who has been the key figure of Forest's season so far. So I'm going to start with you, Steven Toplis.
Hello. I think the key figure at Forest, particularly in recent weeks, has been the Greek god Chaos. Ooh. Wherever you turn, it has just been a complete mess. And things seem to be spiralling out of control.
Well, that took a left turn, said every Forest fan watching this season. Let's go over to you, Tom Newton.
Morning. Pretty much same as Stephen, really. Everything what's followed in the last couple of weeks has been from the man at the top, sacked Nuno, Ange has come in, Ross Wilson has left the club, and it's a bit of chaos around the corridors of the City Ground at the moment.
Okie doke. A big football terrorist welcome to someone who, listeners, you may have heard on the women's show. And joining us today for the big show is Matt Turpin. Hi, Matt.
Well, I'm going to go a bit left field here and go on to the women's game and just put down Carly Davies, the coach of the women's team at the moment, who has exceeded expectations. I'll get around that later because I'll be talking about them later, obviously. But she's been fantastic, and there's a very weird stat about the women's team is that they always score in the first half, and once they score, they don't concede. That's been every game, albeit only 6 games, not a huge sample, but all the same. Her team talks, her half-time team talks must be wonderful because something always happens to the team when they come out. So, yeah, it's definitely got to be Carly Davies. And if Forest are looking for a new manager, you're not having her.
Oh, well, with that stat about scoring and not conceding, insert punchline here about the men's team. And last but not least for this morning, a big welcome to our regular co-host, the Maradona in the Midlands. Would you like to share your thoughts there?
Yeah, so I would say the key figure has been Edu. His introduction has disrupted the harmony. It's It's obviously caused the departure of Nuno. One suspects that it's probably contributed to the departure of Ross Wilson. And what was a steady, calm sea has turned into a rather stormy one, and maybe could have been avoided if he hadn't come at all.
Okay. Well, you know what? I mean, we shall explore some of that as we go on. As ever, we extend a warm welcome to any new listeners and offer our thanks to you and our long-term supporters for joining this, the original Nottingham Forest podcast established in 2008. What I will say is you may have noticed that we've been nominated for the Football Content Awards, and we really appreciate your support. Now, usually with Football Terrorists, we bring you an interview in the second half of the show. But this month, we're doing things slightly differently, and we're starting off with some thoughts about Ange Postecoglou from a Spurs fan. So we're going over to Jason from the Last Word on Spurs podcast, who I spoke to earlier this week.
Football terrorists.
Okay, so I'm joined by Jason from the Last Word on Spurs. Can you tell what they talk about? Anyway, so Jason, thank you very much for joining us here on 1865. Now, just before we started recording, we were having a little chat off air and saying about how everything to do with Ange Postecoglou, for the last, actually, let's even going back to when he was at Celtic, so it's ever since his time in the UK, it's all been about narratives overtaking events, hasn't it? And as a Spurs fan, last season especially seemed to bring that to the fore for you, didn't it?
Absolutely. I think maybe because of his background, that so much of it, Australia, Asia, goes to Scotland. So much of him as a manager is dismissed because of that as a background.
How would you sum up his couple of years at Spurs then?
I think there was, if you look from the outside, Ange Postecoglou walked into a Tottenham club that had no European football and was mocked for never winning a trophy. And then 2 years later, he leaves Tottenham in the Champions League, having won a trophy. So you can look at it that way and say, where's the problem? But I also understand that the flip side is Tottenham finished 17th, lost 22 games, and many people will say he almost got Tottenham relegated. So, I'm probably more towards the first part of the statement, but I think his time at Tottenham wasn't quite as bad as the negative people would say, and it probably isn't as high as the positive. It's somewhere in between. Okay. But I think there's a lot of context that needs to be applied to the simple statement, he lost 22, finished 17th and almost got Tottenham relegated.
Well, go ahead, give us some of that context.
Well, I think people forget his very first season at Tottenham, we finished 5th. He sold Harry Kane on the eve of the season and finished 5th. There would be people that would say defensively he was a mess, but if you look at that first season, he conceded less goals than Eddie Howe's Newcastle, less goals than Unai Emery's Villa. The second season, after 12 games, Tottenham are sitting there in, I think, 5th, 3 points off a second. We were conceding, I think we conceded 13 goals in our first 12 games. So again, you wouldn't call that a mess. And we then hit a period in our season where Christian Romero, our captain, misses 20 games. Mickey van der Ven misses 25 games. Your doggy misses 15 games. Our goalkeeper gets a broken ankle and is out for 4 months. We have an 18-year-old from Leeds, from the Championship, having to play at centre-back. So if that isn't going to affect results, I don't honestly know what is. And then you reach a stage in the season where you're looking at Spurs are now not going to qualify for Europe through the league, for sure. But there is a trophy to be chased. So without a doubt, I'm certainly not going to sit here and say we didn't lose 22 games. But clearly the priority on Tottenham at that time was to win cup games, not Premier League games. The only time Tottenham came close to, as such, being in the relegation zone, they got to within 8 points in January of being in the bottom 3, as you like. And people started to use the relegation word. We then played 3 games, won all 3, and were 15 points clear of it. So, clearly Tottenham worked, despite finishing 17th, and it looks one place above it, Tottenham were never, ever, ever in danger of going down. I think if I said to you, you're going to be missing Murillo, Milenkovic, Morgan Gibbs-White, Chris Wood, Matt Sells, you're going to struggle to win games in that period.
Yeah. Okay. Now, you got onto the topic of Forest. So you mentioned about how if we lost key players, now obviously we've been playing the last couple of weeks without Murillo, but let's have a think about parallels. So Nuno established a really, really effective style of play to save Forest from relegation in half a season and then push them towards European football in the next season, along with an FA Cup semi-final. And that's built upon a mid-low block, defensive solidity, the midfield really kind of supporting the players behind them very, very effectively, providing that shield. And it's quite a stylistic change to go to Ange ball. Tottenham had Conte, and yes, you had a period of caretaker mess with Stellini and Ryan Mason. And then Ange came in, but he had a pre-season. So talk to me about parallels in terms of stylistic change, the time it takes, the teething problems that will ensue.
I think you're right. I mean, I would say even season 1, there was glimpses of what Ange Postecoglou wanted to do at Tottenham, but it certainly wasn't a completed job. But obviously where his problem, I think, at Forest has been in that you've had the Swansea game where he's 2-0 up. You don't really want to lose that. And then you'd look at Burnley and Sunderland and say, you've got to try and win those games. It's difficult, but I think, to be making a judgment on someone. I mean, if I compare it to Tottenham, there's talk about Thomas Frank, but he's only been there 4 months. He's only had 1 transfer window. He's only had 1 pre-season. And there's Ange having had no pre-season, no transfer window, and 4 weeks, and people are making that judgment. It's going to be incredibly difficult for him to turn the preconceived ideas around, and incredibly difficult for him to turn what really is an anger at Marinakis' decision.
And that neatly brings us round to where we started, which is this idea of narrative overtaking events. Now, Jason, just to finish off, and we'll need to do this quickly, I'm afraid, but give me some idea about what are the strengths and weaknesses of an Ange Postecoglou team from someone who watched an Ange Postecoglou team for 2 whole seasons.
People talk about Ange with the high line, and you will see a high line, but probably 75% of teams across Europe play high-press football with a high line. Look at Bournemouth, that is credited for their football. It's a high line. Look at Manchester City all the time. It's a high line. But the narrative is Ange plays a high line. But most clubs do. Most clubs are high-press front-foot teams. I think he puts 2 fullbacks into midfield and keeps his wide players kind of wide. But if you look at that in a shape, how different is that from the 2 fullbacks staying wide and the 2 wide players playing in field? You've still eventually got the same shape to your team, but without a doubt, it leaves you vulnerable to balls into isolated areas where you're going to have a lot of running back to do. And if you haven't got the speed of a Van der Ven, you've got a problem. And maybe Tottenham had a problem last year because Van der Ven missed, as I say, he missed like 25 Premier League games. The other definite weakness Ange has that can't be denied is set pieces. And you're
we know.
That now.
We know
you're finding
that
now. But, is that all to him? Or, as he says at the weekend, if your defenders don't make the first contact, you've got a problem. I think one of the big things that you have to get used to is the fact that perhaps on the touchline he doesn't help himself, because that's a constant criticism that he doesn't instruct his team to do anything different from the side. And even I would say, as somebody that wasn't as against him, when your team's getting beat, you have to show a little bit more. You have to show that you're trying to reorganise things, and that his media interviews after game and that, it doesn't help when he looks at the floor coughing. And that's something that perhaps a PR person needs to sort out with him. And of course, if you don't like him, you will see those things far more than somebody that does like him, that thinks So what he says? What was the score? We've just won a trophy. I don't care if he's looking at the floor.
Thank you very much to Jason from Last Word on Spurs. And we're going to discuss some of those issues coming up next.
You're listening to 1865, the Nottingham Forest podcast. 1865.
Terrorists.
Thanks to Jason, and you can find the Last Word on Spurs on most podcast apps and social media. Before we reflect on what he had to say, I thought he spoke a lot of sense. It's time to hear from our panel in our feature. Penny for your thoughts. In this game, each contestant has a minute to put themselves in the shoes of a key person at Nottingham Forest and to tell us what's going on in their minds. So let's go to our panellists in turn. First of all, we'll go to Thomas Newton, who is in the headspace of Angelos Postecoglou.
Mate, listen, I knew 3 months ago before I was getting the sack at Spurs. I mean, I got them a trophy, right? It's all about me. I got the trophies. None of the previous clubs have won trophies. In their second season, only me. Sorry about me shaking my head, mate. I've been doing it since Daphne died in Neighbours. It's who I am, mate. Fans were chanting getting sacked in the morning the other week. I can't control that, mate. I mean, it's not my fault. I didn't create that chant. So I'm not going to take up the glory. I mean, the only thing on a brick that works is the mouth. And who was the fan who said I've got what's it hands? It's fake time, mate. I'm going to speak to my Kangaroos, mate, about how we stop this mess I'm in. It's all about me.
The result is that at the end of the day, we always win.
Okay, that was Tom as Ange. Now, let's go to Steven Toplis, who is in their brain of Edu.
Dear Mikel, I hope this letter finds you well. I've had a busy time of it since moving to Nottingham. I now know the real meaning of the phrase calm before the storm, except here the storm wears pinstripes. We've got a good group. There's talent amongst the churn. Many are starting to see the professionalism and the drive that we created at Arsenal, even if I did give one player the same welcome to the club gift twice. In my defence, we signed enough players to field a side at Trent Bridge. I don't know much about cricket, but it feels like our attackers are trying to score 4s and 6s with their shots at the moment. Nuno was fun. When he first met me, he just glared at me for 10 seconds, shook his head, wandered off, and mumbled something under his breath. Evangelos asked me who I thought the next manager should be. I told him to bring someone in who's done a good job at another Premier League club. I don't think my sarcasm translated into Greek.
Thank you, Steven Toplis. And finally, we're over to Matt, who is going to be the big man himself, Evangelos Marinakis.
This might eat quite deeply into the lot in a minute, but before I jump into Marinakis' minds, I'm obliged to make a couple of points, namely Mr. Marinakis' mind is on par with those other thoughtful Greeks, Socrates, Aristotle, Plato, and not knowable to a guy from Stapleford with a solitary A-level to his name. And secondly, I know you're handy with a writ, a letter of complaint, or a terrifying tendency to run to the pitch directly, Mr. Marinakis. So please know everything in the following is pure speculation. Plus, your lawyers are probably quite overworked as it is, so don't bother with me. So, into the mind of Piraeus' maestro, and without... so, here we go. Everything's fine. Trust me, everything's fine. I'm still your daddy, yes? You still love your portly bearded benefactor, yes? Still trust that this is all 5-dimensional chess. And I've seen things in Ange like a botanist sees a dull green bud and knows it will soon burst into wonderful flowers. Everything's fine, and maybe I've chatted to Sean Dyche, who's also an underrated genius. But what of it?
You're out of time. I'm sorry. You're out of time. I'm sorry.
Oh.
We're very strict with this sort of thing, and the points will reflect you're overrunning.
I'm hopefully I avoided all lawsuits before I got to the really juicy bits there, so that's probably a relief there.
I think that's probably the key thing for you to aim for with that one, Matt. In many ways, you did draw the short straw. So with the points there, we're going to a more regular point system this month after various complaints from me to myself about the way that points have been awarded recently. So on that one, Stephen gets 3 points, Tom gets 2, and Matt, you were going to get 1, but you get 0 now because of overreaching with your time. Let's hope you can do a little bit better later on.
You have to make a strong debut to these things, don't you? So
So a big fat nothing. Okay, what I want to do is to have a look at some polls before we have a little discussion about what Jason had to say. And last week I asked you on social media who you blame for Forest's current plight. Now on Twitter, where we had a few more votes than on other platforms, we had the question was, following the hostile reaction from NFFC fans after the match against Midlands, who do you think is to blame for the negativity? So we had the options of Ange, Marinakis, Edu, and someone else. Let's just start off with the someone else, because 7.1% went for that, and those who left a comment said Nuno for self-sabotaging, basically. 22.3% went for Ange, 30.7% for Edu, and the majority, or rather the lion's share, went to Evangelos Marinakis at 39.9%. And you'll find that the results were slightly different on Instagram. So 5% went for someone else. We had 20% going for Ange, 32% for Marinakis, and 43% blaming Edu. So Maradona, just coming to you very briefly on that one, and especially given what we've just heard from our panellists in Penny for Your Thoughts, I mean, it seems as though, as often happens when there's discord, people can't really quite agree on where the source of the problem is.
Yeah, well, I think it's fairly obvious that people are frustrated that Nuno went, and there's an anger towards Marinakis and a resentment towards him for creating a situation where Nuno left. But because he spent 180 odd million quid over the summer, and everybody was saying 6 weeks ago that he's the greatest thing since sliced bread, you can't come out and then start singing anti-Marinakis songs during matches. So there's a transference of that anger and resentment towards Ange, who, let's face it, has been there for a month, 7 games, and that's really no time to judge any manager. I've been delving into the old archives just to back up my points here with some facts. I think we all agree that the Frank Clark promotion season was one of our favourite seasons. We finished second in the league. We were all conquering. Do you know how many games we won out of the first 12 league games? 3 games out of 12. And then, I don't know if you heard about this guy, Mr. Clough, Brian Clough, who was back in the 70s. He turned up at Nottingham Forest.
Quite a big name, I understand.
It's quite a big name. Do you want to hazard a guess of how many of his first 12 games he won?
Go ahead.
1. The first game. And then he went on a stretch of 11 league matches without victory. He'd have been sacked by now. This season reminded me quite a bit of that Frank Clark team, and to an extent the Sean O'Driscoll team, where you can see they're trying to do the right things. There's obviously talent there, and there's just been little bits and pieces of bad luck, bit of bad form, players settling in, and it hasn't quite happened. Sean O'Driscoll had that phrase, fine margins and trust the process. And lots of people were getting very angry with him during the autumn of that season, I remember. But by Christmas time, we were quite happy with him, weren't we?
Funnily enough as well, Sean O'Driscoll also referred to chimp brain. Now, he was referring to the players, but are there times that it could be referring to fans? I don't know. Let's just leave that one there.
Just to finish off, I think it's really, really unfair, the treatment that Ange's been having. Some of the criticism is frankly ridiculous. It's not based on anything to do with football. If we're going to say we're sacking him after 6 or 7 games, we're basically saying the training doesn't matter, coaching doesn't matter, none of those things are anything to do with the manager. They just have to turn up, wave a magic wand, say a few inspirational words, and a team's there, fully formed, to go out and win football matches. And quite frankly, some of the stuff we've heard, that the Michelin performance was the worst we've ever seen, is, well, I was going to say something else.
Balderdash. Yeah,
it's not even the worst. It's not even the worst performance of the season. That was West Ham.
Yeah,
so I think it's been really, really unfair and unkind. And I felt embarrassed as a Boris fan for the reaction that Ange has had. And I feel that people who've been singing that song that day and have been harassing him should feel ashamed of themselves.
Okay, so I'm going to come to Tom in a minute, because Tom has been one of 1865 leading proponents of Ange bashing. And I say that in a deliberately provocative way because I want to see the steam coming out of his ears in a second. But a couple of things that come to my mind. Firstly, I think this is very reminiscent of the situation when Aitor Karanka was the manager, and things behind the scene meant that he felt unhappy. He ended up leaving in mysterious circumstances, and then we brought in Martin O'Neill, and a few months later he was gone. Now, Tom, I am going to come to you first, as I promised. And of course, you know, this time last month when we were recording, Nuno departed the club. We knew he was unhappy. It's all imploded. We had that disastrous 3-0 defeat to West Ham. And I just want to come to you, not only with what Maradona's just said, but thinking about what Jason said about the pros and cons of Postecoglou. So where would you like to start?
Well, I went to Seville against Real Betis, and we absolutely blew them away in that first half. We should have scored a couple more. And 10 days later, well, within the 10 days of that game, we've had the Sunderland game, we've had the Newcastle game, the Michelin game. And I just think that the drop-off is alarming. I mean, this isn't like 4 months down the line. This is like within 10 days. And I just think the players, they gave him the benefit of the doubt to start with. Take the Arsenal game out of the way, that was an anomaly because he didn't have enough time with the players. And we have been playing well in certain spells in matches, but it's getting to the point now where I just don't see the players believe in it because we're not getting results. We're shipping goals at one end. And I mean, last week against Newcastle, he went for a pragmatic approach, and then he took all attacking element out of, or the all attacking element of the threat we had, and we're just trying to survive in the game. And this is a team this is our 4th season in the Premier League. Now we've signed players to obviously make sure we're not near the bottom, but went into survival mode, and it's very reminiscent of the first game of the season when we first got up against Newcastle, where we're just trying to survive in the game. And I've just lost faith with them, and I don't want to like be one of those fans saying I'll sack him. I want to lose games to say I told you so. But I'm looking at these games now. They're just getting worse and worse. And I think if you're gonna save the season, I think in my eyes, I think we should change manager because I just don't see any improvement. We're just getting
so in terms of what Jason said there about what you're going to get with Postecoglou, Jason was very, very positive. If Postecoglou is to remain in post, and of course we are recording this the morning after it has emerged that Sean Dyche is apparently waiting in the wings should Forest decide to make a change, and that's reported by John Percy, so it's a reasonable source, it's a good source. But if we stick with Postecoglou, then would you be happy with finishing 17th if it meant that we had a good crack at winning the Europa League?
Well, if you can guarantee is winning the Europa League to get into Europe next year, then yeah, but I don't want that mentality. I want to be well away from that relegation zone because, like I said, there's no guarantees. But I know what you're trying to say,
yeah.
but
and of course, all of that is contingent upon, so as the reports say, and I'm going to come to you on this one, Matt, as the reports say that it seems as though Sean Dyche, the king of Rock City, is being lined up should Forest decide to make a change. But it sounds as though the hierarchy want to give Ange the international break to regroup, to have some semblance, because he's not had any training time with the players. And of course, there are some away on international duty. they're getting a chance to do some training with Ange. Do you think that's going to make a difference? And also, do you think that it's unfair on Postecoglou when he's not had any time to actually implement any ideas, and actually you can see that he is trying to do that even though he's not had time to do it?
Yeah, it's I think obviously it's not helpful for the manager in position at the moment to have all these names being floated around. There's loads of rumours cracking about. Sean Dyche obviously came out yesterday. I do like Sean Dyche to an extent. I saw him backstage at Splendor a couple of years ago, and he was sort of having a holding court and seemed a very nice bloke. But however, I'm not sure if.
All right, lads, let's see how it gets going today. Let's have a great time.
Yeah, that's great if you meet someone backstage at Splendor. Maybe not so much from a dugout, but
Hello, Dave.
who knows? But I suspect that this is all part of Marinakis' game. If you throw these names out, you get people worried about their jobs. They work harder. You sort of keep a sense of tense. You sort of show that you are master. You're pulling the strings at all times, and they have to be on their toes at all times. So I suspect that's happening. As for Ange, I sort of I've got a grudging admiration for Ange, but just in terms of as a person, I'm sure he's lovely. But in terms of actually what he's done, when I think last season one of the defining stories of the season, apart from how well we did, was how poor Spurs did. And when you look at the season this season, you look at the one team that seems to be imploding in front of everyone's eyes, and it's us. And when you try and put the two common denominators together, you sort of notice, there's only one name there.
Mm-hmm.
That said, I do take in the points. It's early days. I never like the absolute merry-go-round of kicking managers out just after, for things that might not be their fault. You might not be examining the real problems, the fundamental sort of problems in the club, and the manager gets it in the neck. That's going to happen. Fans will always do that. But I don't know. If he definitely deserves a few more games, I'd say, but I don't know.
Matt, just very quickly on that one then. So would you say that the thing that maybe sets apart the difficult start under Frank Clark, the difficult start under Brian Clough all those many, many, many years ago, and maybe the situation with Ange Postecoglou, the situation with Steve McLaren, the situation with Martin O'Neill, is the big difference social media?
Well, that absolutely amplifies it. That gives the mouthpiece. It's where how else could you disseminate so many rumours, for instance, about potential people coming in if it wasn't for social media? So,
and absolutely none of which come from within the club, obviously.
Well, yeah, they're in terms of leaks, they're colanders, aren't they? But you can see it is influence, and if you go onto any Reddit theme, they're pretty dire. Some of the actual commentary towards Ange at the moment, some of it deserved maybe, but it's pretty remorseless these days. We work at a much faster pace. News gets out faster. You can disseminate rumours faster. It's not making it easier, but I do suspect that at the top of this, Marinakis is loving it. This is his like the Greek gods playing with the mortals on the ground. He's having a great time with this, sort of moving people around in some sort of fifth-dimensional chess way.
And that neatly segues. Sorry to interrupt you there, Matt. To what Stephen said right at the head of this podcast. So, Stephen, I'm going to come to you in terms of the Greek god chaos. And Baz has commented many times with his knowledge and his friends over in Greece about, frankly, chaos is one of the ways that things work. Now, if it is to be Dyche, then that seems to me to be reverting to the idea that, the way that Nuno did things in terms of tactically and in terms of having a rapport with the players and in terms of trying to make the players into a better unit than the sum of their parts, strikes me as though the club hierarchy has said, that's something that we need, and actually a Postecoglou player who's trying to Postecoglou manager who's trying to change a style of play is maybe one step too far at the moment.
I understand that, and when you factor in that the rot was setting in under Nuno anyway, when you think of how long it's been since we've kept a clean sheet, the fact that we were conceding more goals at the back end of Nuno's time at the club, and some poor goals at that's continued under Ange, and I don't see where Ange is improving on that. If anything, I think some of the goals we're conceding are getting worse. I've got sympathy for him, though. I think he's come into a difficult position. I think the response in the Midtjylland game, I understand the frustration of the fans. And because it's so hard to pin all of the elements of this summer on one person, I think Edu's to blame. I think Marinakis is to blame. I think Nuno's to blame. And I think Ange is to blame. All four of them in a certain proportion. Because of that, I think that's why Ange got so much heat after the Midtjylland performance, because he was just an easy target for all of the vitriol. I'm not saying it was right, but I think that's how it played out. And then I look at Sean Dyche, and yes, there's a sentimental thing with him. He's got links to Forest and Clough in the past. He'd bring Ian Wone and Steve Stone back to the club. But I'm thinking, is our season that doomed already that we're bringing in a firefighter potentially like Sean Dyche? We're still in the Europa League. I want us to have a good stint at that and go as far as we can in that competition.
Dyche has managed in Europe.
Yeah, but he hasn't really done a lot in Europe. And I know it was Burnley, but I don't see him as some master tactician on the European stage. Yes, he probably sorts us out at the back, and that'd be great. And he'd stabilise us. But there's, with all due respect to him and looking at the players that we've signed over the summer and the direction we want the club to go in, there's got to be better and more progressive than Sean Dyche, surely.
Okay, and Tom, I'm just going to come back to you, which is this idea of Dyche. If he were to be appointed, would you see it being a firefighting job, and then basically they'd go all out for Marco Silva at the end of the season when his Fulham contract expires?
Yeah, I do see it as a firefighting job, but it's like Stephen just said, we've got plenty of this season left. It's not like we've got to like February, March, we're in panic mode. But the thing is with Marinakis is that since he's been owner of Nottingham Forest, he's never paid compensation to get a in-work manager out of his current position. So he's quite happily pay like 40-odd million on Amari Hutchinson. I know it's not Amari Hutchinson's fault, but he's prepared to pay big money on that. And yeah, it might be a few million quid, but Marco Silva's in his last year of his contract. So go and pay what Fulham are demanding to get him out of Fulham to be manager at Forest. I just think Sean Dyche is very much a panic firefighting job, and I don't think we're at that stage of the season yet. So go and get Marco Silva.
Okay. Maradona, I'm going to come to you to finish us off and take us on to the next part of the podcast.
Yes, I think everybody just needs to stay calm. Just to put this season in context with our best season in 30 years last season, after 7 league games last season, we'd won 2 matches.
But also, is it worth reminding ourselves that the last quarter of last season, things were not as good?
It is, but I think you just got to remember how early on it is in the season, and just not panic. It's just, and the performances haven't been that bad. I listened to some of the comments and the commentary, seeing things on social media, and I feel like I'm watching completely different matches because I'm not seeing half the things. People keep on going on about Ange Ball, but he hasn't really implemented anything particularly different to what Nuno is doing so far. We've not seen the offside trap being employed from the halfway line. We've not seen all-out attack. It's been fairly consistent, but maybe a little bit more of an attacking bent to it. But really, it's not been such a wild adventure into the realms of Ange Ball that it's totally unrecognisable from what Nuno is doing. So I think everybody just needs to calm down a little bit. Just give him a little bit of time, and let's see where he gets us. Because I don't know. I think from a footballing point of view, he could do some very exciting things. From the reality perspective, where the fans are so against him, I don't think he's got a chance. And I think he'll be gone by bonfires night, to be honest with you. I don't see him lasting just because the negativity around the place is so bad. But yeah, I think that'd be a pity, because I'm interested to see what he can produce with this group of players. But I don't think we'll ever get the chance to see that. A bit like, going back to my original point, Sean O'Driscoll, we'll never know what could have been. But Oh well, that's Forest, isn't it? It's just another day at Nottingham Forest.
Just to add in my opinion, which isn't always my role as the podcast host, but my opinion is I really wish we could defend set pieces again. That's what I would wish for.
But anyway, thanks to all of our panel for those thoughts. Still to come in this edition of Football Terrorists, we will have a chat about something more positive, the Forest women's team. And we will have a quick fire round before our winning contestant gets to play their tricky tree tracks of their tears. But first, it's time for this.
You're listening to 1865, the Nottingham Forest podcast. 1865.
Terrorists.
The Football Terrorist sketch by Jeremy Davies. As any marathon runner will tell you, it's better to finish strongly than to start well. Whether Ange Postecoglou's coaching reign at Nottingham Forest is a marathon or a sprint to the bottom remains to be seen, but without doubt he has a lot of catching up to do, as he aims to recover from the worst start to a managerial career at Forest for 100 years. It's certainly not unprecedented for a manager to recover from a slow start to be successful. Most famously, plain old Alex Ferguson had a pretty poor time of it in his early seasons at Manchester United, resulting in the famous banner on the Stretford end bidding him "Tirah" at the pivotal match against Forest in the 1990 FA Cup, when Mark Robbins' winner reportedly saved him from the sack. Can Big Ange turn it around? Opinion is divided, but perhaps he can take inspiration from other people in history who have got off to a pretty disastrous start, only to end up claiming a glorious victory, and without even having to wait until the second season. To come back to the marathon analogy, there are examples of eventual winners getting off to bad starts. In the 2025 Boston Marathon, Kenya's John Korir won the race despite falling over in the first 100 metres. In 2022, The Sun featured a video of American high school hurdler Abigail Dennis falling at the first hurdle in the 100 metres at a high school track meet, a bit like Ange losing to Swansea City. Only in her case, she cleared all the other hurdles on her way to an heroic victory, whereas Ange stumbled past Batiste and Birdley before crashing unceremoniously into Sunderland. In the 1972 Olympics, American runner Dave Wattle started the 800 metres final way behind the chasing pack, let alone the leaders, but clawed his way back to win gold despite being hampered by injury. Similarly, Postecoglou can point to the loss of Murillo and Ola Aina, which hasn't helped his momentum. In 1914, baseball team the Boston Braves compounded a 5-game losing streak at the start of the season by losing to a minor league baseball team in Buffalo, but recovered from that humiliation to win the World Series. An achievement that didn't get much coverage in Europe at the time, where the media was distracted by other matters such as the outbreak of the First World War. That didn't get off to the best of starts for the eventual winners either, with the Allies eventually deciding on the equivalent of parking the bus on the Western Front, with about as much success initially as Ange achieved shutting up shop away to Newcastle. Until the US joined the fight halfway through, a bit like a struggling side boosting their firepower in the January transfer window. Speaking of geopolitics, plenty of political leaders have got off to a bad start before their fortunes turned around. Margaret Thatcher, perhaps even less popular in Nottingham than Ange, had a pretty rocky first year before a general from Argentina managed to rally supporters behind her by invading the Falklands. Perhaps coming up against an Argentinian midfield general could be the catalyst for Ange's Forest. We'll just have to hope that Alexis McAllister gets back in the Liverpool team in time for the trip to Anfield next month. The big question at the moment is whether Ange is going to turn out to be Maggie Thatcher or Liz Truss. Another member of the 1865 team has already suggested that Ange might not be able to outlast a lettuce, like the short-lived, slightly bonkers ex-Prime Minister. Like Truss, Postecoglou clings to his vision with a sort of ideological fervour, the high-pressing, possession-based style being the Postecoglou equivalent of unfunded tax cuts and welfare reform. Truss also famously met the late Queen the day before she passed away, and whilst it seems unlikely that Anne should be a harbinger of doom for the ruler of Nottingham Forest, Mr Marinakis might do well to heed the lesson of Liz Truss's 45 days in power that radical reforms rarely turn out well without popular support. Mr. Marinakis' shared Greek heritage with Ange is well known, so they might take comfort from the fact that the Greeks' legendary victory in the Trojan War got off to a pretty poor start, when the majority of the Greek fleet sailed to the wrong place. And look how that worked out in the end, all thanks to a wooden horse, with only slightly more mobility than Chris Wood has shown in recent games. Greece is of course the home of the marathon. Postecoglou will be hoping that his race has a bit further to run before he hits the wall.
Thank you very much to Jeremy, and welcome back to 1865 with me, Rich Ferraro, him, the Maradona the Midlands, and our panellists, Tom, Stephen, and Matt. And Matt, thank you for joining us. As I said, regular listeners will have heard your voice on our women's match reports, and let's have a little chat today about the women. So, just because we want to bring a bit of sunshine and light into what has been fairly bleak podcast so far. Now, last week, while most of us were watching the men lose 2-0 at Newcastle, you were watching the Reds women beat Portsmouth 4-1 and maintaining that incredible stat that you mentioned earlier about scoring in the first half and never conceding after scoring. So talk us through some of the highlights of that match.
Yeah, well, it is actually like living in a parallel universe sometimes, supporting the women, so putting them first over the men. To the point that the last 3 games I think we've played have all been more or less simultaneously played at the same time as the men's. So you're often watching on one hand, we've had a run of 3 wins now. You're watching on one hand these wins come in, and watching the other side, the men doing quite the opposite. It's very yin and yang at the moment. Last Sunday was wonderful. Just a few Sorry?
No, go ahead. Talk us through the highlights.
Oh, yes, so very wonderful. Yeah, I'll qualify that. It was very wonderful at the City Ground for the 1,100 or so sort of people who went there. Rumour was going around about what was happening up at St James's, but in the Peter Taylor stand, we were pretty happy. It was a first win. This is a bit of history being made here. It was the first WSL2 win that Forest women have had at home. First points we've actually got at home. So that was good. But I think it was triumphant in some ways that we were so good. It was just clear we were the superior team from the get-go. We conceded early, but because of the stat I mentioned earlier, this way that we always score after they score, and then we stop them actually. We don't concede at that point. You felt, well, okay, they scored in the 12th minute, and we sort of thought, okay, how many are we going to get back? And, there wasn't anything that, we've scored, that's it, they've scored, we're in trouble now. We came back after half-time. I think Carly Davis does something magic at half-time, because she must give a team talk, which is, I think she probably works out their team, their strategies in the first half, and comes back and goes, I have the master plan, and lays it out, and they go out there, execute it, and we win. It was wonderful. It was real carnival atmosphere. We scored. Jessie Stapleton scored quite soon in the 57th, I think it was. And then that drew it level, and we sort of knew we were going to win at that point. It was weird. The atmosphere was just triumphant. It felt like a cup game at that point, and how many would get. And Boy Halorka then, Chantal Boy Halorka, were absolutely fantastic footballer. Shot from 40 yards out, I think it was. An absolute out the blue shot that sailed absolutely perfectly over the goalkeeper's head and went in. And at that point, you thought, right, we are go.
Yeah, I think it was measured officially at 38.1 yards.
It was.
And Reds fans, if you're listening to this, get onto YouTube or get onto the Forest Women Twitter account, because it's a goal that's worth watching, just because of the sheer audacity of it, really.
Yeah, she's a hugely rated player. She's fantastic.
Well, I was going to say Chantal Boy Lorca, a big name in many ways.
Yes, very much so. It takes reading out the team sheets cuts into the game quite a lot with her. But
how do they fit it across the back of her shirt? I don't know. And then the other name that you have mentioned in the past as well is Deanne Rose, who's got a wickedly inappropriate squad number because she's an attacker who's wearing number 6. But you're a big fan of her, aren't you?
Yeah, she is. She's a battler. She's won gold medals. She's been to the Olympics and come away triumphant with Canada. She's played at what top level can you get than that, really? And she is she doesn't give up. She's wonderful on ball. She has this wonderful tendency to think that, when she gets into a tussle in midfield and she loses the ball, that's it. She can sit back, but she doesn't. She's just like a terrier. She is in there fighting for it. And then when she gets it, she has a most wonderful. Again, I don't want to make. You don't want to make parallels with a men's game, but there's certainly a anger about her in that sort of just burst of speed that she gets and takes it deep and stuff.
Yeah.
She is this wonderful, energizing sort of thing for the team. She can really sort of enliven a game very, very fast.
And I want to come back to something that our erstwhile women's correspondent Adam has mentioned before, which is with recruitment, but also when they appointed Carly Davies, it does seem very much as though they appointed Carly not to be someone who can get Forest into WSL2, but someone who can get them in there and beyond. And so far, Carly's fulfilling that remit.
Oh, for sure, yeah. I mean, you would have absolutely forgiven. You would have forgiven Carly Davies and the team for sitting back in the season and just, sort of absorbing the blows, not taking it too far, stalking it out, just trying to get used to it, trying to just make sure, get some mid-table security. But they're out there fighting. She sends out an attacking side. The attacks don't relent. We scored in the 93rd and the 96th on Sunday, so it's not like there's no parking the bus here. There's no sort of take the easy point. That's reflected. We haven't drawn this season. We're either all for it or not. So it does feel. I would have been happy with. I think me and Adam discussed it at the time. We were sort of saying cautious mid-table, but now there is the feeling we're in third. At time of recording, we're kicking off in an hour and a half, and that could potentially take us into second, maybe temporarily. But yeah, it is, and it does feel a parallel because I'm watching, often watching a match at the City Ground. On the other hand, I've got it, sort of watching on my phone, and these are two different experiences. Although both are wearing Garibaldi red. Yeah. So it's a strange experience being a women's fan, but it mitigates greatly against what's happening in the other side of the club.
No, so thank you very much, Matt. Unfortunately, time is against us, but we'll get an update on how the women's team get on today against Durham, and we'll bring that to you in midweek. Maradona, it's over to you.
Right. Let's give our panellists another chance to gain some points in our quickfire round. In a sentence or less, looking at you, Tom, we want your views on the following topics. Rich will award points for your answers, but be warned that he will deduct from your total if your answers are too long. So, first of all, going to Tom on the new City Ground development proposals.
Gone on too long. It has to be done, but with the new plans, I don't know when they're going to be done.
Thank you very much for that concise answer. Matt, let's go to you. Same question.
But always one of the questions Nottingham's been dealing with for years, like what will we do with Broad Marsh? Where will City Ground go next? What's happening with City Ground? It seems a conversation we've had since I was tiny on the terraces and stuff like that. So I hold out no hope until there's spades in the ground. I don't believe anything.
That was a very long sentence. I'm just going to point that out.
And finally, Steven Toplis.
To go through all those years of trying to get approval for the main stand redevelopment and then to tear up that plan reminds me quite a lot of this summer's recruitment.
Oof. He's a man of few words, but the ones he uses very economically.
Yeah.
Okay, so next question or next point. Ross Wilson's departure. This time, let's go to you, Matt.
Too many big egos at one club, and inevitably, people get forced out.
Oof. Nice. Now, over to you, Stephen. Same question.
I think it was always on the cards after Edu came in. Just disappointed he's gone to Newcastle, of all clubs.
We hate those Geordies, don't we, Stephen? And finally, Tom.
Seismic departure, but it was inevitable that he was always going to go to Newcastle once they lost their director of football.
Well, yeah, I suppose he is Scottish, and it's as close as you can get to Scotland without actually having to live there. No offence to anybody living in Scotland. Finally, Morato. What's your thoughts on him, Steven Toplis?
One of the few bright spots of Ange's time at the club.
Oh, yes. Nice. Okay, Tom?
Steady, if not spectacular, but he's always had to cover for the left back when the left back disappears.
And Matt?
Probably wondering if he can get somehow back to Benfica.
Oh, who wouldn't want to be in Benfica? Anyway, let's see. Now, gosh, we've got another couple of these points to go. They're rattling through them, aren't they? Okay, back to Tom now. Player of the season so far.
For me, Nico Williams is Mr. Consistent.
Oh, okay. Matt?
I'm going to go for a women's game one, and Chloe Boy-Haloka. Just astoundingly good player.
Out there. Controversial. Okay, next. Stephen.
Elliot Anderson. Since day one, he's looked superb, and in amongst the chaos, he still looks miles above as our best player.
Yeah, I thought everybody would say that, to be honest with you. Okay, and the last question. If Ange were to go, who would you realistically choose as head coach?
Can you tell that I wrote that question before the Sean Dyche news appeared?
Yes, I think you can. Okay, so we'll go to Stephen for that one first, I think.
Marco Silva, pay the money and get him.
Oof. Tom?
Same. Pay the dough, get him in.
Finally, Matt.
Controversial again, but Carly Davis. But you're not having her because she's doing so well at women. So probably I'll go for Liz Truss.
Goodness. That would be. Has she got her coaching badges? I'm not sure she has. I don't know.
She's never let lack of qualification stop her on anything else.
She might. I believe she did. She was on the same B license course as Nuno, but I'm not sure if she ever went on to the A license.
Who, Liz Truss?
Liz Truss, yes.
Okay, all right. So I have been awarding points as we've been going through, including when it comes to Jeremy's sketch. So he's got 3 points for that. But also for the contributions earlier on when we're talking about Jason's thoughts on Ange Postecoglou, and also throughout the last game. So the points are Jeremy has got 3 points. Maradona Midlands has got 5 points, but in fairness, neither of them have really been playing any games and they didn't know they were going to get any points.
I'm always playing games.
That's true. Okay. And we have got in third place today, it is on 10 points, Matt Turpin on his Football Terrace debut. And we've got a bit of a controversial situation here. So, jointly in first place, we've got Tom Newton and we've got Steven Toplis. Now, obviously, the judge's decision is final. And for me, as the judge, jury, and indeed executioner, I am going to award it to...
Both looking very serious there.
Oh, yeah, it's a very serious business. And yeah, I'm going to award it to Stephen because, as Maradona said, a man of few words, but he uses them economically. So that is the tiebreaker for this particular episode of Football Terrorists. And Stephen, you get to choose the Tricky Tree Tracks of Your Tears, which is a song that reminds you of a big moment for Forest, whether good or bad. What do you think you'd like to hear as our closing music?
To continue the theme we've been talking about, it's a track that reminds me of the last couple of months at Forest. Blind Vision by Blancmange.
Oof.
Oh, he's gone retro. He's gone retro. Okay, we shall sort that out for you. Thank you very much, Stephen. And I want to say thank you very much to Jeremy, to Jason, to Tom, to Stephen, to Matt, and my co-host, the Maradona of the Midlands. We'll be back later in the week with Yates's Espresso Bar, and as well as having a little bit more in-depth discussion of the grand development proposals and the departure of Ross Wilson, hopefully we'll also be celebrating another victory for the women's team. Do stay tuned to 1865. You can find us on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts, and on socials on TikTok, Blue Sky, X, Facebook, Threads, and Instagram. All the links are at 1865.football. In the meantime, thanks for listening to us, and come on, you Reds.
Line hope, line visions, line center, one center, line living and seeing.
You've been listening to 1865, the Nottingham Forest podcast. If you like what you hear, please subscribe and leave us a review. It helps other listeners find our content.
Line vision and no reason for action. Line word.
Brian Walden.
1865.
Terrorists.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Upgrade your laundry routine with a durable and reliable Maytag laundry pair at Lowe's. Like the new Maytag washer and dryer with performance-enhanced stain-fighting power. Designed to cut through serious dirt and grime. And what's great is this laundry pair is in stock and ready for delivery when you need it the most. Don't miss out. Shop Maytag in-store or online today at Lowe's.